welcome. Today I have with me our in-house expert Dhirendra Kumar and Varun Gupta, CEO of Groww Mutual Fund, joining us to discuss the launch of an interesting fund, the Groww Nifty EV and New Age Automotive ETF and FOF. So let's dive in. Welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Varun, starting with you, what do you think makes the EV sector an attractive option for investors right now?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ruchira and Dhirendra, for the invitation to the show. EV is, as all of us know, EV is on a decadal growth path in India right now. Just to start off with some data, in 2021, there were in two-wheeler electric vehicle, there were only about 23,000 electric vehicles which are getting registered. This number in last year FY was close to 1 million. The penetration in two-wheeler, which was close to 0.2% 4 years back, has now reached about 5%, right? The CAGR is close to 243%. The same numbers are significantly higher for three-wheeler, where the penetration is close to 50% right now. And in passenger cars, four-wheeler passenger cars, while the numbers are close to 2%, but this number was only about 0.2% 4 years back. So it's a very, what we see, it's a strong growth path in the EV industry in India. We can take examples of what has happened in other countries as well. In China, EV is already crossed more than 30% in the overall auto. In US is 20% and beyond. Scandinavian countries is 80% plus. So we are very confident as a fund house that EV is a long-term growth trend in India, and we want our investors to get benefited out of it. And that is the reason we have decided to basically launch this fund.
Okay, Dhirendra, coming to you now. How promising do you think is the EV story?
More than promising, what Varun is saying, these are early days. These are still, it is still in the state of infancy. But I think, we have to look at how broad and how deep it could be, or is it going to be a durable change that we are witnessing? And I think there I'm very confident that, given the technological advancement, the battery technology or the autonomous driving that is going on, it's quite revolutionary. Then, the environmental concern, I don't think it's going away. The climate change and, government incentive. Recently, I'm in Noida, and, the Yogi government just said that the hybrid cars and, they're right, they're doing away with the road tax. And that is a very sizable thing. It brings about a difference of 3 lakh rupees on a 30 lakh rupee car, which is almost 10%. So, this government incentivizing, that can also be a huge, driver. Then the market growth, what Varun mentioned just now. And, the expansion of the charging infrastructure, that is also a parallel business which will evolve. Then, cost competitiveness, falling battery prices and, the EV machinery, the environment, the absence of an internal combustion engine, that itself simplifies it, that can actually, once the scale gets triggered. Right now, we don't, these companies and these industries and the components don't have the scale. But, as it evolves, I think the cost competitiveness will, cost advantage will get triggered. And, lower operating cost. Look at the overall cost of ownership. That I think will be very significant change. Then, so I think it's a very long drawn thing. When I look at the corporate commitments, automakers making investment and everybody, getting into the, right now, I don't think there's a very compelling business. It might be a cost center, but it's just a matter of time. Everybody is in the land grabbing mode. And I've seen it with any new, it happened when the cell phones were coming. Everybody thought that, how can people afford this kind of thing? That is the kind of thing which I witnessed now. 13 rupees call or 30 rupee call a minute. And now we, with the scale and this kind of emergence, it's unthinkable to think of a world without cell phones. So when I look at, this energy transition happening, and there's a long drawn, it's the highway is, the runway is very long, because then we will see, we have seen all the symptoms, when you look at the Tesla trucks in India, the way now we have the roads, now we just need the good trucks. So, that fleet migration. So I think, this could be a story which can play out over the next 15, 20 years. I've been, witness to many such things happening in the last 30, 35 years. And then, the regulatory environment that could be quite, conducive. That will be a huge catalyst to the whole thing. So this could be a very promising thing. And winners, losers, hard to guess. Is still in the early stages of, evolution, or in a state of infancy.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move any further, Varun, for those who are new to this, can you break down what the Nifty EV and New Age Automotive Index entails?
Sure. See, I think Dhirendra also summarized it very well. We look at it as a triangle of growth, where there is the customers at the center, and there is a very, very strong customer demand, as has been depicted from the numbers, and also from few, tailwinds like the total cost of ownership going down, subsidies coming in, and so on and so forth. The second most important part is the government push, right? So now there is a strong government push from the manufacturing side, where they have incentivized the manufacturing significantly via the FAME initiatives, then the PLI, and most recently as with EMPS. So there is the government, and the third one is one of the very critical. The reason why EVs might not grow in India is that India does not have a charging infrastructure yet, but that is also changing very drastically, with big companies and a lot of startups entering into this. Now, as Dhirendra also very clearly pointed out, that there is it's a long-term trend, right? It is going to play out over a period of time. Now, and he gave very interesting example of cell phones, right? Now, in cell phones, what has happened, and all of us were there, when the revolution was happening, that there was the CDMAs, the non-smartphones, and there were a lot of companies operating in Nokia, Motorola, etc. And over a period of time, it was because it was a new technology. The technology disruption caused a lot of companies to just phase out, and new companies come and become the market leaders like Samsung, Apple, etc. Now, for that reason, what we believe is, for any new technology theme to play out, a fund should invest in the entire value chain, value chain of companies which are investing in that particular theme. So, for example, now coming back to the EV ETF, EV ETF is not just investing in the automobile manufacturers, right? Not just the OEMs. It is investing in the entire value chain of the companies which are operating under the EV ecosystem. So there is automobile manufacturers, there is battery manufacturers, there is battery component manufacturers. Then there are raw material providers, especially the chemical companies like Tata Chemical, Gujarat Fluoro, etc. And then there are the companies which are working on the technology of EVs, right? The ICT, which is the Tata Elxsi, LTTS, etc. And then there are companies which are not in the top companies in this sector, but have received the PLI incentive. Those companies are also getting covered. So what this ETF is trying to do, or this index is trying to do, is to cover the entire spectrum of the companies which will get benefited of this decadal trend which is happening in India. And the very important thing which I like about this index is that it gets rebalanced every 3 months. So most index gets rebalanced in 6 months or 1 year, but this gets rebalanced in every 3 months, and it is required for something which is changing so drastically. While it's a long-term trend, but it's changing very drastically, right? So any company, for example, there is no pure play EV listed, but there will be one soon. And as soon as that is listed in the next rebalance, that will also enter into this index, right? So that is where we believe this index, this ETF plays an important role to capture the long-term trend which is happening in Indian ecosystem.
Okay, now, Varun, you did quote some numbers right at the beginning, and Dhirendra also mentioned government incentivizing this. But, there are skeptics like Rajiv Bajaj who question the future of EVs in India. How do you counter that perspective?
So it's a very interesting question. I don't think I have any standing to counter that. But what we believe is that, he's definitely of a view, right? Bajaj is investing heavily in EVs. They have come up with Chetak EV. They are investing more to create a pipeline. They are looking at it more from profitability perspective than as a growth perspective. And there is this, he's one company, right? If you look at other companies like Tata Motors, they're investing heavily into EVs. I was looking at some estimates. The four-wheeler OEMs, just the automobile four-wheeler manufacturers, are going to invest anywhere between 30 to 40,000 crore in the next 4 years in India. Right, so we believe that this is a long-term trend. It might be too early for us to say that this might not happen or might happen. Very importantly, actually, where I think Mr. Rajiv might be coming from, is that EV might not happen exactly the way we are envisioning right now. right? It might happen in the hybrid vehicle format. It might happen in the PHEV format, which is plug-in hybrid vehicle. It might happen in the fuel cell vehicle format, right? It will happen, right? There is a transition from, from gas-based fuels to an alternate fuels, which is going to happen over a course of time. The question in how much period of time is not if it will happen. That is very, very clear to us. So from that perspective, there is definitely a growth, but it might take, as Dhirendra was mentioning, it might take 15, anywhere between 10 to 20 years, right? Which is a long-term trend. So that is where I think the skeptics and the question marks are. For the long term, from a short-term profitability perspective, I think still does not make sense, because most of the companies are investing ahead of the curve in EV, right? And just as an EV value chain, if you look at it, it might most likely be negative because there's a huge setup cost and everything. But over a period of time, the dividends will be reaped from this.
Okay, you seem quite confident that in the long term, this might pick up. But
I want to add one caveat. I'm sorry, it's very important for us. See, we again believe, while I'm talking about this fund, I'm talking about this trend, but because it will be going to a lot of investors, this ETF, this is a thematic ETF. It has inherently a lot of risk in it compared to any diversified fund. So only we believe as a fund house that your core portfolio should consist of diversified fund, 70 to 80% of your portfolio. And only if you have a lot of conviction in this trend, if you believe that kind of, you can take that kind of risk, then look forward to do some strategic allocation to this theme. But otherwise, you can choose to stay away from it only if you believe. Do it only if you have the conviction and if you have the risk bearing appetite.
Well, that's very important point that you made, Ryan. Many compare this current EV boom to the IT surge in the late 90s, which later saw stagnation. So what gives you the confidence that this won't happen with the companies in the Nifty EV and New Age Automotive Index?
Yeah, I could have actually reserved my answer to this question, but it's very likely. So it's a theme, it's a sector. It's not really a sector, but I would say it's a very thematic diversified fund, right? It's still very diversified across different. There are at least 5 sectors which are operating in this index. It's not just automobile; it's also chemical, it's also capital goods, etc. Any theme, carries some kind of a risk with it, right? The reason why I'm confident with it is because it is following a certain rule base, right? It is not just investing in certain companies and sticking by it. That, okay, let's say I've invested in X company and I'm betting that this company will basically grow. Here I'm saying that the EV will grow. So we know that IT grew very well, even from 2001 when it was at a very high. It grew till now. IT is consistently growing. Right? What has not worked is certain companies which were really, really hyped at that point of time, which might happen with this index also. Right? There are some companies which are there as part of this index which might go out. There are new companies which will come as this. Right? So overall, the theme will grow. Some companies will keep coming in and moving out because of the way this index is designed. And that's why we believe that the theme will play out very well for the investor. And that's where I believe, like, if you want to invest in EV theme in India, don't invest in certain companies. I personally believe, because you will have to track those companies. Unless you are a very strong market participant, it will be difficult for anyone to know what can happen in the future, right? There might be a very big battery producer in India which might start producing batteries overall across the world, right? And you might just not know, right? So anything can play out. So that is the right way. This is index and the rebalancing 3 monthly is the right way to play out any emerging theme rather than investing behind companies, is what we believe. This will potentially help customers to avoid the IT fiasco which happened in 2001. The other point is that IT was very overhyped. Like, most of us were there. There were companies coming in and out, and anyone was getting IPO'd, and they were raising tons of funds. We are still very far away from that in EV, right? There is still first companies going for IPO first time, first pure play EV. We are still very far away. So that kind of riskiness in the market in the EV perspective, I think I am yet to see. But I'll be very happy to hear Dhiren's point of view on this.
No, undoubtedly, we don't see the exuberance here. And, I'm a repository of all the small stories around all these market excesses over time. When in 2000, the IT boom happened, everybody went crazy. In fact, initially it all started with the great apprehension. It's almost like, I remember the days when people questioned, when mutual fund managers started investing in Infosys,
Yeah.
most investors started, or big investors started questioning that here is a company which has no factory, nothing physical, and we know that promoters run away with investors' money, and the kind of premium they are commanding, it is ripe for that. Likewise, the fear of the incumbents, that is a very significant thing.
Yeah.
Also, let me tell you that there will be excesses. It is just a normal part of the market cycle. I remember there were 20 companies which prefixed or suffixed Infosys to their name once that story started working. And that was quite a nightmare on web interface when we were designing that. You look for Infosys and you get 20 of them.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Dhiren, now that you've cited this example, you've also seen the infra boom. How long do you think does it take for such stories to become a reality, or an investment case that starts delivering?
It depends, but this looks like, a lot of variables are still falling in place. As I was, initially mentioning, that the technology, the environment, and, it is all progressing very, steadily. And then the economics of it falling in place. So, IT was very straightforward. That, what Mr. Narayan Murthy used to say, that, he has invented the global delivery model. Global delivery model was nothing but the internet connection. If you have cheaper guys available in India, and he had the capability of delivering a management which was able to deliver things efficiently, that was the global delivery model. Of course, I'm not undermining the great achievement and the great contribution to the country he has made, but that was invention of a way of working. It isn't like that. And leaving aside the excesses of the market, where people were willing to pay 200 times its earnings in anticipating a magical growth, but one should, if you are convinced, any investor who thinks in terms of convinced that he has to invest in this is a promising thing, and it could well be a good vehicle for targeted diversification. Sometimes it takes few years, sometimes it takes many years. Cell phone, the way it happened was, for initially there were all kind of apprehension, but the moment a network effect was getting triggered, and the moment the cost started coming down, and that is what happens with most of the technology driven revolutions. I remember buying an electronic watch for about 3,000 rupee made by Casio when I was a child. And then, about 10, 12 years back, we were buying in by weight for my child's birthday to return gift to children. So, things, particularly the electronic bit, actually collapses once the volume gets triggered. But here is something, which is a long run thing. People need automobile, people need, autonomy, and this will play out, and all the variables are way too compelling to ignore.
Yeah. So this is something very interesting, which Dhiren mentioned about the cost of technology coming down, right? And this we have seen thing playing out again and again, over and over, in any kind of technology, right? As recently as cell phone, as long back as you go in computers, right? Computers used to be very costly, affordable by very few, and then it came. There were desktops, and there are laptops, and now the cost of technology has come down become very, very affordable. Same is playing out with EV at a very, very early stage right now. It used to be very costly. It was completely based on lithium-ion batteries. The cost of batteries has already come down significantly. Just to give you some idea, battery cost is around 40 to 50% of the overall cost of EV, right? So battery costs are coming down significantly, and very soon it can become affordable. In fact, there is a shift which is happening from lithium-ion batteries to ACC, right? The second PLI incentive which government issued for 18,000 crore was only to promote the ACC batteries. And this was advanced chemistry cells. This might be much more efficient than lithium-ion. And if that happens, then the cost, it will become very, very affordable, significantly affordable with ICE compared to ICE. Right now, it is affordable with subsidies. It might become more affordable without subsidies as well. And when that happens, then it will be, it can create that kind of a revolution potentially, which we have seen in other technology themes playing out.
Okay, now, Varun, you did mention that, it's a thematic fund and investors need to be careful. And So what are the key risks investors should be aware of when it comes to the EV industry?
See, there are so when I'll talk about industry and the ETF both. See, from an industry perspective, I personally, if I look at it, it's largely the technology risk that any company, be any company, right? You can be the biggest company in the world and the smallest company. You are always at the risk of disruption because technology is ever changing, right? And any kind of technology innovation gets adopted very, very quickly. So if a company is not flexible enough, they have already invested a lot of money in setting up the supply chain, and let's say they are not ready to adopt to a new for as simple as this, a new battery which is getting created, not ready to adopt to it, they might become defunct very, very soon, right? So that is the technology angle to it, where I believe. But the way ETF solve for it, as I was talking about, is 3-month rebalancing, right? It's not based on one company; it's based on the entire value chain, and that is where that company over a period of time will not get ruled out immediately from the index, but might get ruled out over a period of time. That is the risk which I see from an EV perspective, but more importantly from an ETF and from the investing perspective, we have to remember that this is a thematic fund. Again, from a long-term wealth creation perspective, your portfolio should be in the the diversified fund. This should be a part of your, I think we call it a satellite portfolio. You can, depending on your risk appetite, depending on your conviction, you can look forward to a lot, anywhere between 5 to 10%, and look forward to do SIPs in the FOF. So both ETF and FOF are live, and for depending on where your comfort are, you can choose to invest accordingly.
All right. Now, lastly, can you walk us through the NFO period and the steps investors need to take to invest in this scheme?
So there are to get exposure to this sector, we have launched 2 schemes. One is ETF and second is the FOF on the same ETF. ETF is ending on 2nd of August. If you want to invest in ETF, you can invest via any of the broker platform or via your financial advisor. They will have access to investing in the ETF. If you want to invest in FOF, then again, you should consult a financial advisor, read the scheme documents carefully, and then you can invest via any of the financial advisor, any of the IFA or MF distributor. They all have access to the FOF, and you can start investing.
All right, then it's time now for us to wrap up this chat. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to speak with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhirendra. Always a pleasure. Have a good day.